Hello everyone, welcome to Liam's Library. Little fella here has just fallen asleep listening to me playing this video. So I thought, why not? I just watched the movie with him and he got right into it for a 3-month-old. Anyway, heads up. This review, I always say this, is a little different. But I was watching a YouTube video by one of my favourite people that I subscribe to. This is a shout out to Cy First, Movie Talk. He watches my videos in order, so it's going to be months before he ever gets to this one. But a shout out to him because I was watching his video with him and his son where they were pulling old boxes out of the attic and discussing his childhood memories. With his son, I thought it was great. It's one of my favourite. I love it when he does Disney movies, but I had a great time with this one. And it didn't make me want to make this video, but it just occurred to me as this morning I found out Stand By Me by Stephen King was on Binge. So I didn't have to pay for it. And I was like, all right, well, me and Hudson here, my little boy, big boy. Well, no, my big boy is Big J-Town. I love you, Jay. Hope you're watching this video. Miss you so much, mate. I seen your brother the other day at HJ's. I'm proud of you both so much, man. Anyway, so I was watching Stand By Me this morning, that Rob Reiner movie based on the Stephen King novella, The Body. Yeah, now, when I was a little kid, man, like, my mum passed away when I was 5.5. So, I remember watching Stand By Me with her in her last house she ever lived in before she died of cancer. Watching Stand By Me with her and just looking back, I have an actual memory of watching that in the middle of the day with her before I ever started any kind of school. I was a little kid, but I never forgot that memory, and the movie always brings it back. So there, I find out Stand By Me by Stephen King is on Binge, and so I chuck it on, and straight away, instead of holding Hudson like this, I flip him around so he can watch the movie. He ends up watching it, right? He fell asleep, so he didn't make it to the end. But as I'm watching it, I'm thinking about childhood. I'm also thinking about my childhood. I'm thinking about his childhood and how he's just started. I also began thinking about how my favourite author, well, not so much my favourite author, but how Stephen King has spent a lot of years trying to put the essence of childhood into his American fiction. Now, American fiction, a lot of people have done great stories about childhood and adulthood. I'm not gonna bloody tick off lists, but the classics, Little Women, all sorts of stuff, right? About the age of innocence and growing up. Now, Stephen King has done this a lot. Now, sometimes it can be really excessive because you've been reading him a lot and you're noticing this niche constantly reappearing, this childhood and this link between childhood and adulthood. But I've been reading Stephen King since when I first read it in 1991 or 1992. Didn't understand a word of it because I was a little kid, but I'd seen the movie and it changed my life. But it is about childhood. The Body is about childhood. Dreamcatcher has a lot of that stuff in it. But I've chatted to you about how Stephen King uses his references. He'll use old American fiction, British fiction, all sorts of stuff, and bring it into the novel that he's writing to give you some form of reference to bounce off of and maybe some point of, something that you remember. Your nostalgia will kick in. Now, writing about childhood is probably the biggest thing of nostalgia you can do. So I try to write. I don't know why I try to compare myself to this guy. There's no comparison. But I write about now. It's really hard for me to set my stories back in 1990 when I was a kid. Even though I've got lots of memories, but they're not that, like I can't really tell you everything that happened in my fucking childhood in the 90s. Stephen King grew up in the 50s and the 60s. And his interpretation of that, how he's tried to write about it over and over and over again, is brilliant. So you've got these serious writers out there that people, just class as a serious writer. Now Stephen King has been typed. He's called a horror writer, but now this is what made me want to talk to you. 20 years ago, you could have spoken to someone, you know, in the 40s and 50s and said, hey, have you ever seen The Shawshank Redemption or Stand By Me? And they'd be like, yeah, they were great movies, like really great movies. They really got me here, you know? And then you'd say, excuse me, were you aware they were written by Stephen King? And they would laugh at you and give you a hard time. Now, we've all heard the story. Stephen King was in a video store or something, and some lady gave him a hard time because he writes horror, and she didn't believe him that he wrote Green Mile and The Shawshank Redemption. Now, my point is, 20 years ago, that was a surprise. Oh, wow, did Stephen King write that? Oh, did he also write that? Wow, they were really, really good books, well-written novels that you never forget. Now, that's about as good as it gets with American fiction. If it's going to live on through the ages, you've written a fucking masterpiece. Now, the year is 2020, and if you're a Stephen King fan, and even if you just know about him, you know that he does both now. You know, it's not a surprise to know that Stephen King wrote The Shawshank Redemption. It isn't. Everybody fucking knows that now. Stephen King's got everything for everyone. He's got something for the sci-fi maniacs. He's got the B-grade horror for any filmmaker who may want to tackle one of his horror stories about monsters. Plus, he's really put the effort in and written some of the best, heart-wrenching, you know, emotional pieces of serious American fiction. And he's written a lot of them. We all know my favourite book is Roadwork, which he published under Richard Bachman, which is serious American fiction. Now, childhood is what I wanted to talk to you about. Okay, so Stand By Me is the film by Rob Reiner. The Body is the book by Stephen King. Now, the dialogue is nearly spot on between these two mediums. Rob Reiner really used everything that Stephen King put forward perfectly to make a great film. But these actors that played in Stand By Me, we got River Phoenix, you know, we got Will Wheaton, Corey Feldman, you know, and the other guy from Sliders. Anyway, they're all fucking brilliant, right? They're all fucking brilliant. River Phoenix, it's hard for me to watch a River Phoenix movie, you know, or a John Candy movie without just sort of tearing up. I just can't help it. But let's talk about the differences. And let's talk about the reason those actors did such a good job. Now, when you pick up the book, The Body, featured in different seasons by Stephen King, we get introduced to Teddy Duchamp. Now, Teddy Duchamp is this manic little crazy little kid. We've all met him when we were 11 and 12. You know, we've all been to public school, man. We met this kid. You know, one of his ears is nearly burnt off, and he's got these big, thick glasses, and he giggles like a maniac, and he always talks about war and blood and guts, and his dad was very abusive, but not alcoholic, scary abusive, like mental patient. If Teddy had kept living with him, he would have been murdered. Now, that's what the book gives you. Plus, all of Teddy's dialogue, all of his wicked, witty, funny as fuck Stephen King dialogue. So not only do you have a description of this person, a history of this person, you have some really great spot-on dialogue given to you. Everything that Teddy's saying is jumping off the page. So when Rob Reiner read this, it wouldn't have been hard to him to, you know, not so much write the script, but just keep the dialogue that Stephen King already gave you. Now, let's talk about Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman is an actor. Well, now he's an adult actor, but back then he was a child actor. A really famous one, probably even more famous than River Phoenix at the time of them filming it. And Corey Feldman is Teddy Duchamp. You know, like, if they made this movie today, there'd still be an actor out there that could really do a good Teddy Duchamp. But thank fucking God we have Corey Feldman. And we had Corey Feldman at that exact time to be there in front of us doing all this witty Stephen King, Teddy Duchamp dialogue. Now, the thing is, Corey Feldman really made it visual for us. But if you read The Body, like that character, Teddy Duchamp, just jumps off the page like that. I could read The Body again right now, and I wouldn't picture Corey Feldman. He'd be very close, like so close it's not funny. But you do. You have your own crazy Stephen King picture of Teddy Duchamp in your head. And he's even a bit crazier than Corey Feldman, if possible. He is. He's just that little bit more raw. Okay. I needed to tell you that. Okay. So Stephen King made it his mission to explain childhood, right? He'd done it in The Body. And he was working at it. And then he published It in 1985. Now, It, he always said in interviews, was his his, his mission to try to explain childhood turning into adulthood. Now that's a pretty big mission, and you write horror fiction, and you've done this in your scariest book imaginable. But of course, childhood is about fear, so childhood and fear, as opposed to maybe just childhood. But he really pushed it in that 1100 plus page novel, the childhood thing. He really hit it on the head. He did, but he did things that we don't want to really read about, like a fucking preteen orgy and terrible things that, thank God, were left out of the 2017 fucking chapter 1. Okay, but the childhood. Now, he did succeed. He did show me a million things that reflected back to my own childhood with nostalgia. He did. I read Stand By Me when I was 11 years old. I read it when I was 11 years old. I'd read it 2 years before then, and I've read it 2 years after that age, and then as I've grown up. But I'll never forget the time I read The Body by Stephen King when I was 11. I was the same age as them on their mission, man. I was the 8th loser from the loser club in my fucking mind. I didn't have anyone to share it with. The reason this video exists right now is because I did. This channel is here for me to literally just discuss what really drew me to the man in the first place. I was a child reading about children in this horror, fantastic supernatural realm, which is bullshit, but his knowledge of his own childhood is there. So I won't tell you that Stephen King is the best writer of childhood. He's not. He most certainly is the best writer of his own childhood, and who's more qualified to write about their own childhood than themselves? That might be a bit of a bullshit conundrum, but anyway. But, yeah, Stephen King isn't about the horror and the references and the heart and the character development. A lot of it, like a big, big part of it, is him remembering when he was a kid. And, it's like Stephen King's still living in the 50s. It's 2020, he's an old man now. And he's still living there. Now, before I go, because this was just a rant about this, and childhood and Stephen King, but before I go, I wanted to say something. If you've read The Body by Stephen King, you know there's a part where they all sit around the campfire and it's their first night out there. And in the movie, the same thing happens. They're all sitting around the campfire and they decide to see who's going to take watch and then who's going to sleep, and they take turns. Now, a couple of times in the book, they wake up with coyotes howling and they're shitting themselves because they're 4 kids out in the middle of the woods. Like, it was a good idea in the daytime, but at nighttime it's a lot different. And they're terrified in the movie version, Stand By Me. And, like, what is that? What is that shit? We need to take turns. Fuck, that doesn't sound right. Now, in the book, that happens. But then an hour... Oh my God, that's so funny. That's what he needed to do. Did that just wake you up, son? That's perfect. Welcome to Liam's Library. My son just done a shit on my channel. That's so good. You're a good boy, Hudson. That's a crack up. Okay, get back on track. So, in the book... Oh, what, you're awake now, boys? So, in the book, this happens too. But then an hour or two later, they wake up again, and it's not a coyote howling in the woods. It's like... Are you for roll? It's like this screaming, howling banshee of like this woman in pain, and it's not an animal noise, and it's not even barely human. It's this screeching sound that wouldn't come from any animal. And the way the book says it, it's almost like, yeah, and they're talking to each other. Like, is that the ghost of Ray Brower out there fucking screaming, knowing that we're here? Is he looking for us? And they terrify themselves with this while this strange thing is howling, and it's borderline supernatural here. It's not a coyote, it's not a wolf. There's something fucking howling in the woods, and they shit themselves, and they end up just huddling up and fucking, and they can't convince themselves anything different. Do you know what I mean? So it's like there is no supernatural element to the movie Stand By Me, but it really, hey, Mr. Man, it really, really borderlines the supernatural in the book version, The Body. Now, one other thing I have to quickly say. Stud City. Hey, Mr. Boys. There is a part in the book, The Body, where all of a sudden the story just stops and it says Stud City by Gordon LaChance. And we read a story written by Gordon LaChance when he's young about a teenage fucking, some hot rodder rev head, you know, that lives with his dad and his slutty stepmom. Turns out he's fucking his stepmom, and his dad's sort of so weak he won't look at it, and he can't believe he's living there. And fuck this, he gets in his fat hot rod car and he gets out of there. It's called Stud City. And Gordon LaChance, based on the death of his brother, which is what we're reading about when we're reading The Body. You know, we're reading about Gordon LaChance dealing with the death of his older brother. So he writes a story called Stud City. No one's ever made a film or a short film about Stephen King's Stud City, even though there was talks about it in the 90s. There was. And there's something else I wanted to say about it. About Stand By Me. And the differences. Yes, okay, and here it is. And it's perfect that I end with this, because in the movie, Richard Dreyfuss is narrating it as a grown-up Gordon LaChance. In the book, we have grown-up Gordon LaChance also narrating it, but there's a murder mystery. At the end, the grown-up Gordon LaChance is thinking about how they found the body of Ray Brower, what day he went missing, where the bucket of berries was found, and where the train tracks were. And Gordon LaChance it doesn't really add up. Almost like maybe someone murdered Ray Brower, and the dead body they went to look at was a murder victim that just went under the headlines. Oh, he must have got hit by a train. In the book, I don't think Ray Brower was hit by a train. He was murdered by somebody out there. Who the fuck knows who? King never wrote a prequel. Though it is heavily suggested in The Body that it wasn't a train that got him. Couldn't have been. Or, you know, maybe I'm just thinking too much about it, is what he thinks, you know, like. So there's a murder mystery in the book version. But they were probably smart to leave, Rob Reiner was probably smart to leave that out of the film version. So I'll leave you with that. I'm glad I gave you a lot. Anyway, yeah, tune in. We got some cool Joe Hill shit coming up. And Merry Christmas. Take care of your family. Read some really good books. Watch some even better fucking movies. Take care of one another and don't take any shit from anyone. See you later.